Well, Austin, I'd like to thank you for allowing me into your homes for this 23rd edition of Season 2 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And there are a couple of things I'd like to start with. Most of you are aware that today is May 1st, and that's pretty well known for a few things. Just to start quickly, the Mayan calendar day for today is the Yellow Electric Star Day. And we didn't actually put together a graphic, but nonetheless, today is the Yellow Electric Star Day. Excuse me. And today being May 1st, today is also the day that communists tend to celebrate for what's going on as far as this being the birthday of communism. And so May 1st, there's a lot of, I saw some news events earlier in the day that talked about a lot of gathering going on around the world as far as celebration of communism, anti-capitalism, and that sort of thing. Also, today is the day of the new moon, and this is a new moon during Taurus. It's not the new moon in Taurus, but the new moon during Taurus. And so we have those energies available to take advantage of. Now, the last time I had a live show, I asked folks to help me out with a meditation that allows us here, or wherever we are actually, to be able to tune into certain energies that are available at the time of specifically the new moon or the full moon, and working from that cycle from the new moon as the moon continues to grow and gain fullness, and then as that cycle of waxing and waning continues, so we can work with that energy. And that's part of what we have an opportunity to do. And so I wanted people to kind of still keep in mind, if they can, that we still are in a process which is known as the High Interlude, which is a time during the year when the most spiritual energy is available to mankind, and so we can kind of store a lot of this energy and hold this energy for projects that we may be working on, and that we can further disseminate this energy and dispense this energy to use as we continue with projects later in the year. And so it's just a matter of, again, using rhythm, using rhythm or cycles to accomplish certain ends. And that whole science, it is very much a science. And so we can take advantage of this once we understand more so what exactly the nature of that capacity is, and how the energy and force that's associated with the full moon and other bodies tie into mankind, and how we can make use of that energy for the benefit of humanity. And so keeping that in mind, if we can still continue to follow this cycle through the next 3 months, and this culminates with the full moon in June. And I will be hosting a meditation at a public place at the what's either called the North Loop Library, or it's also I think it might be the Hancock Library actually. It's at Hancock and Burnett Road, and I'll be getting into that more so in the future, because it's not until June 11th that I'll be holding that. But and it'll be between 7 and 8 p.m. But nonetheless, I'll get more involved in that in the future as it gets closer to the event, because I know. It's going to serve more so to speak about it closer to the event, because people tend to forget and what have you. But if people could kind of get that a little bit in mind. May Day is a time that a lot of folks celebrate nature magic around the world as well, and that kind of ties into this May Day energy also. And so today's topic that I want to get into is impression, or the science of impression. And what exactly do I mean by impression, and how does that exactly, how can you consider that a science? When we consider the term impress, when something is impressed upon someone, something, maybe perhaps it might be a meeting with someone. You meet a certain particular person, and you learn about this person, and somehow you could say, rub off on you, influence you, what have you. They make a mark on you in some way. And so a meeting can be one aspect of having an impression from meeting another person, perhaps. Also from attending an event, any kind of event that you can think of. But just a quick example might be like a concert, a music concert, that someone would attend a music concert and be very impressed by the band's performance, or the interaction with going to this crowd event, and having people, vibing along the same vibes, and kind of going with the flow of this performance or what have you. And so again, an idea of impression, something that makes a mark or makes an impact on somebody. And if we consider Also, another aspect of it too, an impression that someone receives, it can be part of an individual impression, or it can be part of a group impression that several people collectively receive a shared impression, or again, it can be more of an individual impression that something or some event or someone, excuse me, is able to, again, make a mark on someone that influences them enough that this stays with them. It comes into their consciousness in such a way that this impression becomes part of one's very being. And I know it may sound a bit metaphysical, but nonetheless, it is really, that's basically the long and the short of it. When something like that makes an impression on us, again, whether it's an event or a meeting or what have you, we take it into ourselves and make it a part of ourselves. And so one example, another analogy I'd like to try to use would be in olden times, for instance, if a king or someone needed to sign a letter and then seal the letter, excuse me, they might have a ring or some kind of a mark that they could put into hot wax, and the seal would be impressed into the wax. And so when the wax cooled, you would look at the wax seal and you could see again, the symbol or the mark made by a piece of jewelry or what have you. And so I'm hoping to use this analogy somewhat to impress your thinking about, again, the quality of impression. The whole idea of the impression, the ring making the mark into the hot wax, and then becoming a part of that wax. That impression, again, being a part of it, being placed into it so that, again, it's part of the being, in a sense. And so considering that, there are different qualities and levels of intensity and various factors that come into play as far as an impression that one may receive. And I want to get into, first of all, a bit of the different types of individual and the level at which this individual would perhaps be able to take in some level of impression or perhaps not. And if we want to start with just the person that is very much centered, what we would term within the lower centers, the centers below the diaphragm, that these people tend to be very self-centered, very materialistic, very into themselves, and they don't think of other people, they only think of their own selves, and so they're caught in that mentality, that way of thinking, that paradigm, or that consciousness level. And so they, for all intents and purposes, are not really even moved and swayed except, say, by public opinion. And even then, maybe not so much. So certain individuals, again, depending on their focus, their attention, their centering, if you will, are going to be able to receive impression to varying degrees. Again, the person that's centered in the lower nature will be able to receive no impression or little to no impression. And so then if we consider upwards a bit on the old evolutionary ladder, and that we do take part in this evolutionary process and that man does evolve. And so that does not to say that one person is better than one other person. If we point and say, oh, Joe is better than Tim or Tom, it's not necessarily true. And it's not true. It's just that each individual has traveled a bit longer or traveled on the ladder of evolution, and maybe a rung or two above the other person. But it's maybe perhaps to the fact that they have taken better advantage and made better use of their time and done the things that it takes to, again, move along a bit more quickly along this path of evolution, or what's also referred to as the path of return to divinity. And so as the average man, as far as the bulk of humanity would be concerned, they would fit in this average person category, that they're impressed mostly by public opinion and largely motivated by their own personal desires and goals, and they are beginning to occasionally think of others. And the whole idea of public consciousness and mass consciousness, as that is impressed on large numbers of people, whether that may be a type of government, a monetary system, some kind of a moral quality as far as like killing is wrong, these kind of qualities that make their way into our thinking and our consciousness, and again, become part of us, become a part of our very being, are going to impress us at certain levels. Now again, the average man, the bulk of humanity, if we would consider them at this level, again, are just starting. They have the very embryo of thinking about other people and thinking in the embryonic sense of group terms and looking a little bit towards the larger picture in a very vague and nebulous sense. And so there's just the very initial birth pangs of that larger understanding are coming into their awareness. But we see this process unfolding more so and more so, like a flower coming into bloom and blossom, that this awareness can fulfill itself and we can have a fuller understanding of a larger reality the more we apply ourselves to this process. Next, I want to take into consideration the man of goodwill. And the man of goodwill is largely concerned and interested in the big picture and is very aware of the needs of humanity. And so the needs of humanity, once they've made their impression upon, again, the man of goodwill, excuse me, the man of goodwill starts to relate their thinking and their feeling towards others more so. And again, feeling for others, empathy, sympathy, these qualities come into play more so. And we lose sight of our separate self in gaining a larger perspective. Now, that doesn't mean we lose our individuality. And even, excuse me, even at extremely high levels of consciousness, outside of our planetary consciousness, even exceeding that level, we still maintain an individuality. We still maintain the core of what we are that makes us us, even though we ultimately meld back in or move back into a larger stream of consciousness and spiritual understanding and the whole divine evolutionary unfoldment that we become part of. We still maintain individuality, and that's something key to keep in mind and remember as well. And so as this man of goodwill starts to have the birth pangs of group understanding more so, and is looking for a way to relate to groups, group expression, and looking again at the larger picture and how that person can put oneself in a position to be helping, to be serving of the race at some level, and to bring out some expression. And we see many individuals with ideas of goodwill that are working at various levels and various areas and endeavors, whether that be governmental, educational, what have you, that are going to be trying to do what they can with their own God-given capacities to further improve, what their strong points are to further help people. And that's the key. Once we achieve that focus or that attention or consciousness level we would term goodwill, then we start actively pursuing what we can do to help others, and it becomes a focus and a preoccupation in our lives more so and more so. And so then we go on to the next fuller blossoming or flowering forth of creative expression through humanity, and we find a level of individuality. Individuality is a bit misleading because it's really a group, the new group of world servers, obviously comprised of individuals, but individuals that are very focused in a group formation. And so that is the crux of their focus, is groups and the mentality of a larger picture. And the new group of world server individual his focus would be considered more cosmic as opposed to even solar or planetary. And so those embryonic seeds of the really big picture are coming into play and are making a real impact and impression on these individuals that would comprise this group, the new group of world servers. And these are those that know of a divine plan. They have, beyond any shadow of a doubt, a knowing that there is a divine plan and that it is working out, and that they are playing a role according, again, to their own qualities and their own capacities to bring forth some fuller blossoming, some fuller expression of our human condition for the helping of the race and for the salvaging of humanity. Again, excuse me, responsibility comes into play, and responsibility becomes the keynote that once one is responsive to these impressions, then one has a sense of responsibility that basically just gnaws at one until one enacts and does something. And this new group of world servers is comprised of many individuals that are linked to groups, and groups. The groups themselves would be a various evolution within a hierarchical or maybe like a pyramidal structure, if you want to use that analogy. But it's all working together. It's not as if the top portion, in this instance, is looking out for its own self in spite of the larger numbers. This is a total working together where everything is integrated within one totality, one unity. And that is a difference between this sort of a hierarchical structure or pyramidal structure in contradistinction or in direct opposition to what will be termed a new world order, those that wish to enslave us, or Black Lodge activities would be trying to bring forth, because that emphasizes the individual and that emphasizes separation. It does not emphasize love, and it emphasizes working for the few at the expense of the many. And that is the way of black magic, and that's the way of the selfish materialist thinking that is falling by the wayside more so and more so as we progress into the future times, and the unfolding and the consciousness level of the average man is extremely high in our day and age, and our high culmination of culture and civilization compared to what it was, let's say, hundreds of years ago, and especially thousands of years ago. And so the average man today is the equivalent to perhaps what we would term an initiate consciousness back a few thousand years ago. And that's how highly civilized and how highly specialized man has become. Even, again, what we would term the bulk of humanity, or the average man on the street, has reached that high level where, again, impression is making an impact on this individual, and they are responding to that impression. Some more aware than others. Some are going to be more conscious of this impression, and they're going to be able to put tabs and fingers on where this influence came from, or what they're hoping to achieve by receiving some sort of an impression or an impact. And so the new group of world servers, getting back to that body of individuals, group thinking individuals, they're aware of the interrelation between the various kingdoms in nature as well. And so they work actively with the kingdoms below humanity and the kingdoms above humanity. And again, there's a total system where everything is considered, and the working out of this energy and force is directed with intelligence, with love, and with much careful thought and planning. Again, being impressed by the divine plan and aligning ourselves, our intentions, with our understanding of a divine plan, and how we can make use of this opportunity and do our part in this great work that is really, really here and now, more so than ever before. And I really am going to emphasize that a bit more in a second or two here, that here and now is really the time that we have to emphasize our energies, get our motives in the right, whatever that means to us, getting right motive, goodwill and cooperation, and these kind of qualities that are going to really bring forth a fuller blossoming, a fuller expression, and that can really serve to manifest and from seed come to full fruition in a much faster amount of time. These days, the way things are culminating, and it has to do with a lot of astrophysiological, physiological with humanity, a lot of things that people tie in with the concept of a speeding up or a hastening process related to our evolution, and bodies in rotation. And that could be within our system. We have, within the atomic level, we have that rotation. Within the centers in our body, which we have 7 main centers, or chakra centers, that are energy vortexes or whirling centers of energy. And then that energy, in turn, ties itself in with the larger energy. So that exchange is constant. It's just that some are able to take advantage of it and some not so much. And the more we are aware of this capacity and this quality of energy exchange, the more we can do our part, and we can make this science of impression a very real and valid practice in our daily lives. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of, at the very least, bring out into consciousness of the person out, the viewer out there, that these different aspects of esoteric science, the laws of cause and effect, which is also known as karma, this law of science of impression, science of invocation and evocation. There are many terms, but they all comprise a larger body of knowledge, this esoteric science, and they're all like little courses of study within a larger body of understanding, and certain aspects are going to appeal to different individuals. And that, excuse me, that ties into what we would term a ray type. And so once we get to the level of understanding, at least of what we would term a new group of world servers, these individuals are going to start to be more aware of the qualities that make them up, and the qualities that drive them and motivate them, and the inherent nature within them. And they're going to know some things about themselves. And the person that is able to know and determine and discern some things about themselves in this way can understand the qualities that they can use, because again, it's like when you mix yellow and blue, excuse me, when you mix yellow and green, you get blue. It's a kind of like this color scheme match thing. You meld the two colors and you get a new combination. We can imagine our ray types within an individual blending, and so if we were yellow and green, the overall tone would be blue. This kind of is, hopefully this analogy is somewhat useful, and that we have this blending of qualities, or this blending of colors, tones, qualities, frequencies, however you want to term it, that come together to make us who we are and make us maybe more emotionally predisposed, more mentally predisposed, more into artistic expression, more into a devotional attitude, maybe a religious approach. Everyone's different, and so you know, among the 6 billion people, we all are a mixture of ray types, and so there's a lot of room within the 7 rays, so-called, because they're all manifestations, and we're traditionally 5 main combinations, and so there's a lot of exchange and interplay and a lot of opportunity for vast numbers of combinations within these ray meldings, mergings within each individual. And so the rays also extend out to family, cultures, in the sense of a nation would have a ray type. Like for instance, America, love, wisdom is tied into America, as it is to Great Britain. The soul quality of India would be termed ray 4, or harmony through conflict. And so if we can start to make a case study of these rays, we can see why it is that certain people may tend to act a certain way from a certain cultural group or certain way of thinking or what have you, that you're going to see that cultural stereotypes have their origin in this so-called ray energy. And so there is some truth to the idea of a stereotype, although it's unfortunately been used to accentuate negative things as opposed to looking at it as a science and a real valid way to understand the qualities that comprise nations, individuals, and that amalgamation and how they can work together, being understanding of the rays. If we know certain individuals are a certain type of ray and we're a certain type of ray energy, then are these rays going to clash? Are they going to harmonize? How do we work together intelligently? That's part of the science of occultism or esoteric science, studying and looking into the hidden aspects of man, the psychological nature of man, mental, emotional, everything that makes us up. When we study these things and understand them more so, we can use this exchange more intelligently for the helping of humanity. And that's really up to us as to how much of a science and how much of a study we want to make of this. A lot of these things I'm talking about won't really come into play until sometime in the future, but to get the seeds now in people's consciousness and thinking is quite important in my estimation, because this is going to, we're laying the seeds now for future unfoldment of civilization and culture and society. And the next unfoldment of a racial type, if you will, as right now the dominating Anglo-Saxon influence of our current Aryan race is waning or fading, and a new racial influence is coming in. But this won't be an ethnicities per se like Anglo-Saxon, Greco-Roman, Jewish, Egyptian, Persian, Indian, the previous ages that were more so in line with an ethnicity or racial type. More so in the future, the 6th subrace of this Aryan unfoldment, which is a 7-part unfoldment, just like the 7 main chakra systems in the human body. There's a 7-fold system recurs over and over again, also the 7 ray types. And so we see this energy unfolding, and we see the process of 7 culminating and then starting over again. And the musical scale, the putting white light through a prism and it breaking into the 7 primary colors, or 7 colors, 7 separate distinct colors. We see again the breakdown and how we can make more intelligent use of this energy exchange. Excuse me. And so as this 6th race comes more into expression, the 6th sub-race rather, we're going to see the qualities of this race come into expression more so and more so. And it's going to be a group endeavor, and people are going to be having a more synthetic approach towards things. And so you're going to see a melding or a synthesis of a lot of systems existing, coming together and bringing out the best qualities, picking out the best qualities of maybe governmental, financial, educational, even in the sense of worship and religion and spirituality. Certain things will be emphasized more so. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the full moon to the new moon to the full moon, and these certain cycles that will be emphasized and practiced with more so in the future for the betterment of all, as our understanding culminates more so and more so in line with the divine plan. And that's coming into fruition much more quickly these days, because again, from the inception of a thought, from inception of thought to the conception, to the birth of something, we see this hastening and quickening so much more, that from the time one thinks a thought or has a motivation to do something till when something actually demonstrates itself on the physical plane as a result of that motivation, the time is shortened so much and so much that from thought, again, from inception or thought to fruition or to culmination, from the thinking to the actual birthing of this concept or whatever, to the action, is shorter and shorter, and we're becoming more specialized with our capacity to be able to pull this off in a much more effective and powerful and potent way. And when that becomes added to group formation on top of our individual efforts, we have a real platform and basis for some real work. And so it's my hope that we can understand more so our group opportunities and how group exchange and that future unfoldment, the synthetic unfoldment that we have available in this upcoming Aquarian age, is really vital, and it's very viable, and we can really make use of it. So I'm trying to get some awareness of these concepts so that as this becomes more so the mainstream in thinking, and I'm pretty confident that it will, then people will be ready to make some use of it. They'll have some understanding of some of these concepts, and so it won't be completely foreign to them. And that's my hope, is to give some future preparation, some preparation now for future unfolding. That future unfolding is a relative term. I mean, that can be a day, a week, a month. It's really, who knows? And when you've got folks out there saying that, this Planet X or Nibiru is going to be coming back by the end of this month to cause our globe to stop and a pole shift, I mean, that's being predicted within a month. So, anything can happen, and I don't prescribe to that taking place personally myself. I just don't think there's enough evidence for this Planet X being on the horizon. If we're going to see it coming into between the orbit of the Earth and the Sun within less than a month, then this thing should be a little bit more apparent on the horizon, in my humble opinion and estimation, although I'm not an astronomer or astrophysicist or anything along those lines. But nonetheless, there are people that are crying that the sky is falling. So let's see if the Chicken Little thing is going to pan out. I would just caution people not to be too fearful of these potentials, and just trust your intuition on these things, and let's see what happens. Okay, so again, going from, as I was explaining, this chain of transmission of impression, the new group of world servers is kind of like a mediator, like a soul aspect between humanity in the various ranks, and more so the average man on the streets, and that aspect of humanity which is also known as the fifth kingdom in nature, or the kingdom of heaven, Christ and the Church Invisible, these different names that we might be familiar with. The hierarchy. This hierarchical body receives its impression from an even higher aspect, which is the will or father aspect. And so if we look at it from that level, then, from the will down to the hierarchical aspect, and this transmission filters down, and then from hierarchy to the new group of world servers, and then down to the rest of humanity ultimately, and that we see this transmission taking place. Once we understand more so about how it takes place, then we can actively and intelligently work with the hierarchy, which also symbolizes love or pure reason. Love in the quality that it's not love for an individual, it's not love for a puppy, or love for an automobile, or love for your wife, or anything along those lines. It's a love that is inclusive of all things, and it's a non-separative type of love. It's all-inclusive, and that is the highest aspect of love that we can aspire to. And these individuals demonstrate this action. They demonstrate it by their life service and how they've committed themselves and sacrificed themselves to stay behind, in a sense, to help us unfold our evolution. And so they work actively, and this also is a high watermark, or the high culmination of what we can aspire to, this state of masterhood, sometimes called, or a state in which the soul is dominating and the personality, whims, and desires are killed out completely. And even at this high state, the masterhood state, the soul itself has merged to the point with the spirit, or the Father in heaven, that one no longer needs to be trapped to the law of rebirth. And the wheel of karma no longer has them held in check. So they're free from karma, they're free from the laws of rebirth. They do not have to come back into rebirth. They generate a physical body for themselves that is adequate for the needs that they serve, again, and that would be their impressions of the Shambhala, or Father in heaven energy or aspect, the will aspect. And so when we can tap into the will more so, then the connection becomes even fuller. And that is part of the more advanced aspects of yoga meditation, in that this yoga or union allows us, through certain practices, to do something that is spoken of in the Bible. Take the kingdom of heaven by force. What does that mean specifically? When we activate and put into, we engage this kind of speeding up process. We actively motivate ourselves and set ourselves to hurrying up the process. So by taking the kingdom of heaven by force, we use the methods available to us. Again, yoga is the main means that I'm familiar with. There are other means too, but it's probably the surest, and it also is something that's yet to really unfold itself for mankind in a real viable sense. But in the future, more so, man will be more motivated to meditate, and the fruits of that meditation will be more understood. And so those, once they reach the understanding of wanting to meditate or wanting to, again, approach the will of God in some way, they're going to want to search out the means that they can to do this. And once that becomes one's motivation, these things tend to find their way into expression. So we will find our way into where we need to be to do our part as we desire to do so. And so our motivation ties us into our capacity and our ability, and with whom we can work, opportunities given to us, and this whole merging together of the different kingdoms in nature. And so humanity is merging rapidly towards this fifth kingdom in nature, towards the hierarchy. And the merging of these two kingdoms as one dynamic activated field is rapidly coming into play. And so we can work actively and intelligently with the different portions or groups of the hierarchy. And there are individualized groups called ashrams that are it's again like a pyramidal or hierarchical structure, and there are various aspects that tie in from the highest levels of hierarchy down to the bottom of this structure and merge the new group of world servers, so-called, with the hierarchical activity and intent. And so we see how integrated and intertwined within the hierarchy are those more advanced or more aware or evolved or conscious members of humanity that are actively and intelligently working with these great individuals that have that stay behind to salvage the race in some way or another, according again to their own ray type, to their own qualities. Because once they've achieved this high understanding, they can work specifically on their ray, and they can accomplish a tremendous amount. And so it's up to us as to how, when, why, if at all, we want to make a move to merge with, again, the will of God, the spiritual triad. This is a real viable thing for us, and the science has been around a long time. It's just now, within the past 100 years or so, becoming more prevalent and able to be used by mankind. And so keeping in mind also, as far as future impression, how is this future impression, how is this future working out going to unfold? Well, the future is difficult to predict, as most people should know. And that being the case, we can only give some general vague outlines. But as far as the different ray types, we're going to factor them in more so in the future, as far as, for instance, in the educational system. Individuals it will be more available to us as to what ray types individuals are. It will be more apparent to individuals in the future, and so we'll be able to specifically, put the ray types in similar classes as far as for educational purposes. And they'll be mixed up with all kinds of different ethnicities, because we'll find ray amalgamations within all the ethnic groups around the world. And so you won't see a homogenized group, you'll see a mixed group, but based on similar inner or esoteric qualities, the ray types, and these psychological motivating factors will be emphasized more so. And those will enable for us to have a better overall educational system that'll be more fruitful, it'll be more beneficial and more specific to individualized need. And that will be something to consider. Also, governmental, I really see an amalgamation of a capitalist system, social aspects, and somewhat communism, although communism as a true pure system cannot exist because it's an absolute, and there aren't any absolutes in nature. There's not 100% total, 100% intact thing. Everything's a blend of some other quality, and so we wouldn't see that necessarily unfolding. More so, we would see a blend of some of the potentials of a communist or communist thinking as far as the idea of sharing, more so than the totalitarian concept. It would be more the concept of sharing, mutual understanding, group exchange. And those are the keynotes of synthesis for the future. The Aquarian age upcoming, fast approaching and precipitating down onto mankind is making these things available for us. And so as we seek to work with this impression, this intent of the will of God, we can see these things unfolding more so. Now, certainly, just as man can work with these higher aspects of divinity and the divine plan of evolution, there also are those that work to hold back or prevent the evolutionary process from unfolding in the way that it might otherwise. And these are sometimes spoken of as the Dark Brotherhood, the Black Lodge. These are some of the negative extraplanetary influences. Some of them might be familiar with the reptile alien influence and some things along those lines that keep us locked in a state of fear and keep us locked in a state of selfishness and materialism and keep us largely aware of the fuller picture. And so that being the case, if we choose to consider a bit about some of these expanded concepts, that there's much exchange and interplay amongst humanity, between humanity and various levels of consciousness. Below humanity, above humanity, some running parallel to humanity, that there are those that are interested in what's going on this little planet of ours and the transition that's taking place, both by virtue of the Aquarian transition and by virtue of the fact that our planet is becoming what is termed a sacred planet. And so we're moving into a point where our globe will be emitting much more light, spiritual light. And there are those that are aware of this as well. They're trying to hold this back. And they're, again, on the involutionary path, and they're trying to prevent our fuller expression. And so you see these individuals that are tied into the bloodlines and what have you, and different aspects of secret societies that are working to prevent a fuller unfolding. They're working to keep us locked in a particular frequency of fear, keeping us in with the status quo and just keeping us used to normalcy in the way that things are. Because change is especially abrupt change can be very traumatic, and so people get used to the way things are. They tend to just go with the status flow, and they just like the way things are. Not really like, but they're just so accustomed to it, they don't want to rock the boat. They just stay with the flow. And that's a very selfish, ignorant way of thinking ultimately, although we have to respect that there are those that choose that way of thinking. That's their attitude and that's their that's their consciousness, so we must respect that. But a more inclusive understanding, I think, is going to definitely be the way of the future, and we're going to be able to take advantage of that. And so this flow of energy works in both both directions, that we can work for our fuller expression and understanding, or we can work to retard or hold back our evolution. It's up to us, really. And there are really, luckily for us, only a handful of individuals that work on this dark brotherhood path and that are working very diligently against our fuller expression and our fuller freedoms. And they are very much in fear because they see the paradigm shift. They see that this glamour, this maya, this illusion, this fog that we're immersed in, that's part of our waking day consciousness, we just don't realize it, most of us, that it's dissipating and diminishing, and that we're able to see past this fog, and that the Isis is becoming unveiled, if you could appreciate that esoteric term, and that things hidden are becoming made aware to individuals at many levels. And again, the average man on the street is becoming aware of this more so and more so, and he's able to be impacted by this impression more directly, and he is starting to respond to it. And we see that more so and more so. Some refer to the hundredth monkey theory, as far as just before too long, things are just going to catch on in public consciousness. After an amount of time, certain people, key individuals here and there, grasp a concept. It becomes part of mainstream thinking. It becomes part of the cosmic consciousness, if you will, or the Akashic record is another term as well, that we tap in at some level to this greater understanding, and we make use of a new concept, a new whatever it may be. It really wouldn't be necessarily new, but it would just be a new rendition or a new model of something already existing that would be adequate for that particular expression. And as we evolve, we find that we constantly have to have a vehicle of expression and situations that are going to be adequate for us to have that fuller expression. When things no longer fit, then the first ray, or the destroyer aspect, comes into play, and that some may be familiar with the Hindu terminology of Shiva, that destroying energy comes in and clears out the old, worn-out things so that new things can come into being, and we can make use of new energies, and so that, again, the new vessel will be able to take in these different qualities, forces, and energies, and make optimum use of them for our benefit and our evolutionary unfoldment. If the body and the vehicle was not adequate, likely it would definitely cause great turmoil, and it might just obliterate the vessel if we weren't able to have the proper vehicle to take in the proper energy. It's kind of like getting shocked in the electric chair. Our physical vessel is not made to take that kind of an energy exchange or shock, and so it would definitely be the end of life in most instances for that to happen. It's kind of a rough analogy, but nonetheless, we make ourselves, as evolution unfolds, we make the proper vehicles for the proper expression and transmission of energy, and more so it's going to be focused on groups as the future unfolds itself. And so we're transcending that glamour, and we're building that lighted link, that lighted living globe that's made up of individuals that are expressing the highest aspects possible, their highest aspirations, devotions, and are expressing their lights, their individual light. And so when you add 1 + 1 + 1 of all these lighted individuals across the globe, we see literally there's a lighted living link, and the globe is becoming more light, in the sense of light is spiritual light, many aspects of light. Light is a multifaceted concept, and light also in the sense of lighter being as well, as far as not so dense, but lighter, as far as the frequency and the refined nature of our vehicle. We will be more refined and not so dense in the future as well, and that's part of our unfoldment that we have available too. So those are some of the things I wanted to concentrate on, and also just to get people to kind of consider what maybe your, again, qualities, capacities, or maybe you're taking it a step further, what are your ray types, if you want to get into that aspect of it. You know, are you more centered in the head, the heart? Are you more of an artist? Are you more of some person that has political aspirations, religious, educational, financial? All these are governed by different specific ray types, and so you may want to consider what are your interests in, what therefore is your ray type or ray composition that makes you what you are and who you are, and then you could take advantage of it for a fuller expression, further salvaging and serving of the race. It's really up to us as to how much we want to make use of this science, this esoteric science. It's available, it's been available forever and ever and ever, since time immemorial. Since man was self-conscious, we had some level of esoteric science available to us. And so it's just only part of evolution that we continue to use it and continue to, that it will continue to expand and make its presence felt into the mainstream more so and more so. Because what was esoteric science and hidden years and years ago, thousands of years ago, is being shouted from the rooftops and is common knowledge to the Joe Blow in the streets. And so that evolutionary process continues and unfolds, and we can take advantage of it right here and now. I mean, if it's not a good time for you guys, if we need to get back to you if this is an inconvenient, inopportune time, you know, that's not going to cut it these days. Now is the time, and people, even, only excuse I would say in this instance would be those that have not been able to bring this truth into themselves fully. If you're still kind of questioning some of these things, you're still riding the fence, then so be it, and I'm respectful of that. But if your understanding of these concepts more so that you're taking them in as fact into your very being, then you should, in my estimation, have that sense of responsibility actively ignited and lit so that you are thinking in your mind, what can I do to help somebody? What can I do to help salvage the race, to serve humanity, to lift and to uplift the people around me, my family unit, my work environment, all areas of human endeavor. And what are my strong points? What can I reach out and expand into in terms of group endeavor, group approach? And so think really sky's the limit, in the sky's the limit kind of mentality. I would say don't shortchange yourself as far as what you think you might be able to do. If you start putting limits on your capacities, you're going to very much limit your capacity because you're going to put a ring around that capacity. The larger your ring, the larger your ideas of potential and what is possible, the more you're going to be able to bring in these energies and you're going to be able to make use of them. You're going to think that some things are possible where the average person may say, there's no way that's going to take place. But from my own experience, if you have the will and the motivation to do something, you can make it happen. A lot of things. There are some things that are going to, I mean, not in every instance will we be able to manifest exactly what we want in our lives. I mean, that would be fanciful to consider that and think that was true. But nonetheless, we can make a lot of use of the opportunity and understand the science of creating thought forms. Know that energy follows thought, and as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. And we are comprised of our thoughts. Our thoughts make us who we are ultimately. If we're thinking negatively, we're going to be negative. If we think positively, we can be, again, optimistic of opportunities. We can see how something negative and how something dismal can be turned around and made into something constructive in some way or another. So let me go ahead and grab a few calls, see what's going on this evening. Hello, caller.
Hey there, Corey. My TV's kind of loud. You were talking. You have to bear with me. I got kind of a sore throat. And you were talking about the musical scale, or something how relating it to 7, but there's actually 12 pitches between octaves. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right?
Right, that's true. But as far as just cycles of 7, there are also lesser cycles of 7. You know, you get the 7th note, then the 8th is the octave.
Right, but if you count the half steps, you get, I believe it's 12.
12 is also esoterically the number of completion, and so that does very much tie in also. And 10 would be the number of perfection. And so numbers and frequency, all that ties in intimately. Is there anything else you care to add?
Yeah, well, I hadn't called your show in a while, and I just wanted to remind you about Fact Bashers Unite, Fact Bashers Unite, Fact.
All right. Hey, buddy, I've watched a lot of Access, and you are a very prominent person on the air as far as watching a lot of Access. So, man, I'm not going to knock you, buddy. You do your homework, and you watch a lot of Access. So I don't know if you're just a homebody or what the deal is, but I hear you calling in a lot and getting through a lot. So, hey, more power to you there, brother. Have a nice evening. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good.
Hey, we got a pretty hardcore game of Dungeons & Dragons going on, and we just lost our half-elf magician.
Yeah?
Think you could fill in?
I'll send you some good vibes, brother.
All right, appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. Have a good evening. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, these are the kind of things that's another idea of impression as well. The things that have filtered their way down into public opinion and consciousness. Hi, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey.
Hello. Go ahead.
Hey.
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? Just having a television show yourself.
You know what I'm fucking...
Okay, real cool. Anyway, getting back to the idea of impression. When an author, for instance, has an idea for a book, or a songwriter has an impression for a song, you know, these things are going to filter in certain ways. Maybe it's the songwriter, you know, sees a beautiful flower or something like that, or the writer sees a beautiful flower and that inspires them. Whatever the case may be, there are different methods of this impression, and certain things, certain ideas are impressed into individuals via this chain of command or commission, transmission, however, what terms you want to use, that allow from, again, the will aspect to filter its way down. And so sometimes when people come up with a concept for a new invention, a new scientific discovery, or what have you, they're very much in tune with this larger divine plan and hierarchical impression. And so they might be actively in touch with a direct link with these individuals, and that they are being impressed by the hierarchy, so-called, specifically, and that these individuals are sending them an impression. And that happens often, actually, and that there's a very real bridge or communicating link of transmission between these ideas, these concepts, these archetypes, and what is going to be the evolutionary unfoldment at any given time. Man is constantly reassessing these concepts, and so we're bringing forward the best that we can at any given time. But we're often, in many instances, getting these impressions and these concepts from a higher source, from the fifth kingdom in nature, or the kingdom of heaven, the hierarchy, whatever term you choose to use. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
All right. Hey, can you give me a proper definition? What is esoteric and occult?
It means hidden or within or inner. It
Uh-huh.
does not mean evil or negative or anything like that. That's why sometimes it's thought of as bad, because it's hidden,
Right.
inner, within, not well known. And that's how God works. God is built on inner qualities that find their way out into outer expression. Just like
Right.
the seed becoming the tree, the seed becoming the flower. It comes from an inner quality, an inner livingness,
Right.
that finds its way into outer active expression. And so esoteric would be studying the inner aspect, getting to the cause behind the effect. And so when you're an esoteric scientist, you're always looking at causes and seeing how causes behind the scenes pan out into physical plane manifestation in all
Right.
areas of human endeavor, whether that's through the sports field, government, education, entertainment, arts, religion. Everything has that same chain of command, if you will.
Hey, check it out. So, where did this esoteric thought have its beginning? In Africa, Europe, Asia? So
Well, if you consider, according to esoteric science,
Right.
there was a continent a long time ago called Lemuria. It doesn't
Lemuria.
exist anymore. The leftovers of Lemuria would be like Samoa, Hawaii, parts of Hawaii,
Right.
and even parts of Australia would be considered. And so your South Asian people, like your Samoans, and especially
Right.
your Aboriginal people, are
Right.
considered some of the oldest people on the planet, supposedly.
Yeah, but
And
check it
so
out.
when man first became self-conscious,
Uh-huh.
or the whole tradition of Adam and Eve, when they tasted of the fruit and
Right.
they took on that quality, that's when esoteric science at some level became available for man.
Right, but I was doing some study in Egyptology where that concept is in ancient Africa, and it had its start, during the Egyptian era, as the pyramid text.
Some people allege that, and I can understand that. But you know what? Really, it's everywhere. It's pervasive all over the globe, and
Right.
and Atlantis existed before that as well. Well, Lemuria, then Atlantis, and then the civilizations, according to esoteric science anyway. And then the cultures, the Indian and the Persian and the Egyptian and the Jewish cultures and the Greek cultures, those sprang up after the fact. But we see cycles, and we'll see that this information passes into the culmination with a certain age or group, and then it'll pass out of that group, and they'll
Right.
lose their high culmination, and then it'll move on to another group, and they'll maintain it, and they'll make use of it for their qualities and purposes.
Right.
But ultimately, it's all for the helping of humanity. We just can trace this esoteric science through all peoples, of all cultures throughout time, if we really want to. To get into the start of it, I mean, if you want to consider Africa as far as what we can see now,
Right.
Africa has early beginnings, certainly, but there were land masses, and there continue to be land masses coming up as
Right.
others fall and subside. There's a constant flux of land rising and falling, and so before there was land that was the main center of understanding,
Right.
and in the future there will be other land that will be the seat, just like you might consider America now the center, or Europe perhaps, but in the future it'll change again, and in the future it'll change again. We've got much more time left as humanity on this globe before we finish our culmination as far as evolution, so
Right.
there's much more expression yet to come. But I do thank you for your comments, and have a nice evening.
All right.
Hello, caller, you on there?
Thank Precious United States!
Buddy, you're getting in there pretty good. What are you, the devil dialer or something? Hello, caller, you on there?
Hello?
Hi, how's it going?
Man, this stuff...
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
What are you guys, cloning yourselves? This is insane. Oh man, the copycat crime. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Hello? You're on the air, caller, go ahead. Hello, caller?
About your lack of balls.
Sorry, say again?
Your lack of ball.
And how are you so perceptive? Are you psychic, my good man? We're getting some really winning callers this evening. Okay, we got about maybe 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to kind of recap a bit to start. Maybe we can grab another decent call in a second here, hopefully, maybe. But anyway, it really depends. It's up to us, really, as to how much we want to entertain of this concept about this esoteric science and our opportunities for group work and things that the future will hold for us. This may or may not be. This is just how I foresee it, my intuitive feeling based on certain readings that I've done, and just again, my intuitive sense of what I see as far as trends developing, and it just seems like apparent that this is playing itself out. And so this is what I see and this is what I speak of, because this seems to be truth unfolding as far as I'm able to determine it. And so I would like to get other people to start considering what they feel as far as a future truth unfolding and how they can play their part in it. If they like the way things are now, and they like the idea of a police state and the idea of Patriot Act being the norm and all these things affiliated with that, then that's fine. But these things are rapidly shifting. And really, the biggest fear that individuals have is freedom. And that's the irony of it all. Being a slave and being enchained, even if it's just metaphorically and not really with real shackles, that concept of being a slave is comforting to so many people. When you take away the routine from somebody and you force them to think for themselves and force them to be on their own, that is a fearful place for a lot of people. And so freedom has its own bonds. And it, in many cases, is more of a bond for many people than is being a slave. And so that being fearful of freedom is holding many back from this possibility of potential for being optimistic about the change and the transition time coming ahead for us. And then once we get past that fear, and until we start to get past that fear in larger numbers, then we're going to have some difficulty. We're going to have a rougher transition. The more we can be accepting of and aspire to and really look forward to freedom, the more it'll come into being, and it'll be a smoother transition. And that's certainly my hope, that we can make the smoothest transition possible into this upcoming Aquarian time, and that we can make use of all of the qualities and potencies and characteristics that are part of this and are available to us. Let's see, I do have a couple calls, but I'm not going to be able to grab another call in the last minute of the show here. I just want to remind folks that we are here every Thursday live from 9 to 10 on Channel 10. I'd like to encourage folks to check out Jeff Contreras. Hopefully he will have a live show next Tuesday at 10 on Channel 10. And the next meeting will be May 21st for our metaphysical meeting, so keep that in mind as well. Opal Divines, from 8 o'clock on, we meet at the upstairs of Opal Divines and have an informal meeting, very free, very casual. I'd like to thank everybody, again, for tuning in. I'd like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. And please consider what we can do as far as the future, consider your qualities, and consider keeping an optimistic approach. There's a lot that can be done. There's no reason for fearfulness in this day. Things are changing, but things are changing for the better. We just have to realize it. It's going to take a little time, a little effort. Nothing good is free. Let's work for a real change. And thanks, Austin. Good night.